Hollywood loves to show us a future where robots are just taking over. Terminator, HAL 9000, you name it. Our next guest is Dr. Robert Marks, author and professor of engineering at Baylor University. His latest book, The Case for Killer Robots, talks about a not too distant future where intelligent machines are given the same fear and respect as nuclear weapons. The only question is, who manages to get their hands on them first? Hey, thanks for coming on the show today, Dr. Marks. We're so happy to have you here. So let's dive right into it. One of the biggest threats we face in the future, what is it?
I guess it depends on your perspective. I think that we do have artificial intelligence being introduced into the military, and that has to be done nicely because to remain competitive, especially in the United States, the military has to respond and adapt to new warfare technology. We learned this from history, and it's a fact now.
So, you use the word killer robots in the book title. Define that for us.
That's an excellent question. I'm actually using terminology from the opposition. There's lots of opposition to development of human robots right now. Human Rights Watch uses the term in their campaign to stop killer robots. But basically, the idea is to use any artificial intelligence that is autonomous, that can act on its own. And that's one of the fears that people have, one of the rightful fears that people have about use of military autonomous robots. And so killer robots encapsulates all of that. So it would include, for example, missiles, which are launched and take over for themselves and think for themselves, choose their targets and go off. It would include things such as autonomous underwater vehicles that are unmanned, that are out there for themselves. So I think killer robots kind of brings to mind these kind of mechanical men that kind of move around, but we're using it in a much more general sense. And it's the incorporation of the term, of the idea of an artificial intelligence in these devices.
So that these devices could take over and they would be autonomous, as you say, because right now, if we are looking at drone technology, we've all seen the videos where the drones are flying over certain areas where there's conflict, but they're actually being controlled by people here in the United States.
So yes, many of them are remotely controlled. But one of the big things coming up in artificial intelligence and warfare is something called electronic warfare, where the spectrum is actually exploited and used. And you can imagine, for example, this drone, which is tethered to the automatic pilot by a communications link, is disrupted in mid-flight. And if that capability existed, what do? You either have to scrub the mission or you have to go to an autonomous mode, if you will. I don't think that would have been a good idea in this case, but those are the things which we're going to be facing in the future.
So when we start talking about these killer robots, and again, as you mentioned, it covers a broad spectrum. Is the United States ahead of the technology curve, or are we catching up to another country? And what is that country that we're catching up to?
Well, yeah, actually, this is an area of concern right now. The U.S. is losing the arm race. There was a recent, November 2019 report by the National Security Commission on Artificial Intelligence. It was a bipartisan congressional committee that says we are behind, and they concluded their report with, we've got to get this right. It's not optional. China, the Republic of China, is putting $30 billion into development of AI. I suspect a lot of that is going into military operation. China is on the way to dominate the world economically and probably militarily in the area of artificial intelligence.
So is our problem here in the United States that we just are not giving it the proper funding?
There is funding. I would argue with the details of the funding, but both the Pentagon and DARPA are investigating this right now. But apparently we look to be kind of far behind. I mean, even Russia, Putin says whoever controls artificial intelligence is going to be the ruler of the world, is his exact quote. So you know that Russia is also interested in this, and they're not friendly people to us.
Well, you know, a lot of people are afraid of artificial intelligence. They don't understand it. They're afraid that they're going to lose their jobs. I mean, just on a basic level. And so when you start talking about military warfare using AI, it kind of probably rightfully so freaks a lot of people out because they picture these machines that are going to just take over the world, and then as humans we're not going to be able to ever have our control back. Is that a premise that you see?
No, I don't. I think that we confuse reality with science fiction many times. It turns out that artificial intelligence will never be sentient. It will never be creative. It will never understand what it's doing, and currently it lacks any sort of common sense.
Well, thanks again, Dr. Marks, for joining us. Really interesting perspective on future warfare. And speaking of tech in the future, hey, make sure you keep up with all the latest and all things digital with my free Komando.com newsletters. Just head over to Komando.com and click the link at the top of the homepage and sign up. That's all there is to it. Hey, thanks for watching. Now, a few things. Don't forget to click the like button and also subscribe to our YouTube channel. And for more digital know-how, check out all these other great links.